The 2020 NHL All-Star Weekend is finally here. I'm sure a lot of hockey fans are excited for it. Let's hear it from everybody who's excited for the 2020 All-Star Weekend. But all jokes aside, everybody kind of knows that the NHL All-Star festivities seem to get less and less interesting every year, and of all the major sports leagues, it is definitely one of the worst All-Star weekends, maybe besides the Pro Bowl, because that is a complete joke. But even with that being said, I'm going to try and stay in the All-Star spirit with today's video. You would think the meaning of an NHL All-Star game is to show off the best hockey players in the world, but sometimes that is not always the case. With some of the weird rules and quirks surrounding selecting the teams, we have had some very random players named to an all-star team. So without wasting any more time, for today's video, I'm going to go over the 7 most random NHL all-stars of all time. But first, if you guys are a hockey fan, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to turn on notifications so that you never miss a video. Starting off the video, we have Peter Sidorko, goaltender for the 1992-93 expansion Ottawa Senators, and man, was that team ever awful. The current rule the NHL has of every team must have a representative is not a new thing, because if it was, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. Peter Sidorko finished the 92-93 year with an abysmal record of 8-46-3 with a 4.43 goals against and an 8.56 save percentage. And of course it wasn't all his fault considering how bad that team really was. It was still definitely strange to see somebody with those numbers selected to an all-star team. What makes this even crazier to think about is goaltenders like Tom Barrasso of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who finished the 92-93 season with a 43-15-5 record and a 901 save percentage, were left off of the all-star team, while players like Peter Sidorko were all-stars. But hey, why showcase the best talent in the league when instead you can show off at least one player from every team? And I'm not hating on Peter here, because again, there isn't much he could have done playing for a team like that, but he didn't even have 1 year in his NHL career where he had a 900 or above save percentage. Peter would only go on to play a total of 4 more NHL games after his all-star season, 3 of which came in the 93-94 year with the Devils, and his final game coming in 1997-98 also with the Devils. Overall, Peter Sidorkovich's career wasn't anything special, but one thing that nobody can take away from him is the fact that he was once selected to an NHL All-Star team. Next up, we have Mike Komisarek, who for his entire career was always known as a shutdown defenseman, a hard-hitting tough guy, and usually players like that don't get the All-Star nod, but that wasn't the case for the 2009 All-Star game in Montreal, where Mike Komisarek was selected to his first and only All-Star game. At the time, he was a member of the Montreal Canadiens, and with Montreal being the host of the 2009 All-Star game, Komisarek received a ton of votes. And this is back when fans had a ton of control when it came to the fan voting, which isn't really the case anymore because the league wants to prevent stuff like this from happening. Komisarek finished his 2008-9 All-Star year playing in 66 games with the Habs and putting up 2 goals and 9 assists for 11 points and a whopping 121 penalty minutes. Not necessarily all-star numbers, but when the fans set their mind on something, it's pretty hard to stop it from happening. Komisarek went on to play the following 4 seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs before playing his final NHL season in 2013-14 with the Carolina Hurricanes. His career didn't have too many highlights besides bone-jarring hits, but I'm sure he will never forget being selected to the 2009 All-Star team. Moving along now, we have Peter Buzik, defenseman for the 1999-2000 Atlanta Thrashers, a team that finished the year with just 14 regulation wins. They were bad. And of course, every team must have one representative, right? And the 2000 All-Star game was a different format than from what we see today, where it's 4 divisions and a 3v3 tournament. In 2000, it was a North America versus World game, and back then there wasn't near as many All-Star caliber Euro players as there is today, which made selecting the players for the World team a little bit more difficult, especially on the blue line. So with all that in mind, Peter Buzik was the perfect candidate to be a random All-Star in 2000. He was a Euro defenseman playing for the god-awful 1999-2000 Atlanta Thrashers, so with them needing to pick defensemen for Team World and wanted to have one player from every team, he was the perfect guy. Buzik finished the 1990-2000 season playing in 63 games and putting up 5 goals and 14 assists for 19 points, which to be fair was the best season of his NHL career, and one of only 3 seasons for him in which he played 30 or more games. Busick finished his NHL career playing in 157 total games and putting up 31 points, but hey, he was an all-star once upon a time. But in all fairness, the North America vs. World format sounds pretty sweet and is a good way to show off some non-North American talent. If they had a format like that today, I'm sure it would be fantastic considering how many amazing NHL players there are from all over the world. Next we have Doug Roberts, and we're going back a pretty good ways for this one. He was a member of the 1970-71 California Golden Seals, a team that lasted just 1 year in the NHL under that name. And in that 1 year, they were bad. Not quite as bad as the expansion Ottawa Senators team, but they were still pretty bad. This is another case of the NHL wanting at least one player from every team. Did I mention that I think that rule sucks? Roberts would be the selection for the All-Star team from the Golden Seals for the 1971 All-Star game. Doug Roberts would go on to finish his All-Star season with a total of 78 games played and just 4 goals and 13 assists for 17 total points. Again, not exactly numbers that scream All-Star. Doug Roberts played a total of 419 games in the NHL and had 43 goals and 104 assists for 147 points. His career concluded in the 1974-75 season where he played 26 games for the Detroit Red Wings, and who knows, maybe we will have another Doug Roberts type of All-Star selection once Seattle hits the ice for their inaugural season, because I kinda get the feeling that they won't have the type of first year in the NHL that the Vegas Golden Knights did. Next up we have Marcus Ragnarson, another case of the North America vs. World format making for some very strange All-Star selections. Ragnarson was a consistent member of the San Jose Sharks blue line from the 1995-96 season all the way up until the 2002-2003 year, but he has never been one of their top guys or somebody that you would think of as an NHL All-Star, but sure enough, Ragnarson was selected to the 2001 NHL All-Star game to play for Team World, a season that saw Ragnarson putting up 3 goals and 12 assists for 15 points in 68 games. The Sharks were actually a pretty good team that year as well. Out of all the players in this video, Ragnarson probably had the most successful and productive NHL career, playing a total of 632 NHL games and putting up 37 goals and 140 assists for 177 career points. Still not a player that you would exactly expect to have an All-Star appearance, but due to the format back then, he had one. And of course, we have the John Scott story, and in all honesty, the 2016 All-Star game that saw John Scott be named captain of the Pacific Division team due to a ridiculous amount of fan support and voting, and also named the All-Star game MVP, was probably the last All-Star weekend that I was truly invested in watching, because it was just such a feel-good story for John Scott, who is a great human being and one that Gary Bettman and the NHL certainly were not a fan of, but honestly that made it all that much better. Throughout his NHL career that lasted 286 games, John Scott was never known as anything more than strictly an enforcer, somebody who would be on the ice to fight and protect his teammates. So it was very out of left field and random when the fans decided to vote him in. Back in 2016, the NHL would provide weekly updates on who the fan vote leaders were, but that quickly stopped after John Scott held the #1 spot in one of the voting returns. The NHL honestly tried everything they could to keep Scott out of the All-Star game without just coming right out and saying they're not going to allow him to play. John Scott even said that the NHL tried to convince him to drop out of the game, even saying that a member of the NHL called him and asked, "Is this something your kids would be proud of?" And looking back on it, I'm sure his kids were damn proud. John Scott took over All-Star weekend and it was the talk of the hockey world. It was awesome. Even though he was an enforcer, he did not disappoint in the 3v3 tournament. Scott scored 2 goals in Game 1 and led the Pacific Division team to the tournament victory, and despite not being a finalist for the All-Star Game MVP, Scott was awarded the honor as a write-in candidate with 10 NHL teams voting for him on Twitter, including the Edmonton Oilers, who voted for Scott over their own player Taylor Hall. Shortly after the 2016 All-Star Weekend, the NHL adopted the John Scott rule, which is basically just a bunch of things to ensure that something like this would never happen again, even though it was one of the most successful All-Star weekends in recent memory, this proving that the NHL just hates fun. I didn't want to finish out the video with John Scott because that would have been too obvious, so let's finish out with talking about Zemgus Girgensons, who was voted in as an All-Star in 2015, 1 year before the whole John Scott thing. So the fans still had a ton of control when it came to voting back then, and Girgensons' home country of Latvia was determined to get him into the All-Star game. His entire home country, it seemed, voted for him every chance they got, leading to him being an All-Star in 2015, and to be fair, that was the best season he has had to date in the NHL, where Girgensons put up 15 goals and 15 assists for 30 points in 61 games, and since since then he hasn't cracked the 20-point mark in a single season, but hey, at least he was an all-star once. This was really just another case of the fans taking over, and I'm honestly surprised the NHL didn't make some rule after this happened, because if they did, they probably could have avoided the John Scott stuff from the year after, but it all worked out in the long run. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. The skills competition is tonight, which for me personally is probably more exciting than the 3v3 tournament itself, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. But make sure to let me know down in the comment section below how you feel about the current state of NHL's All-Star Weekend. Is there anything that you guys want to see changed? Me personally, I'd love to see a North America versus World game, but that's just me. So with all that being said, if you guys did enjoy today's video, please make sure to go down there and smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for some more NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.